Welcome to What a Creep, the show with Margot Donahue and Sonia Mansfield, talking about creeps from the past to the present.
This is your quick guide to the biggest creeps, jerks, assholes, and losers, the best of the worst.
From two nice ladies who want the world to be a little less creepy.
Welcome back to What a Creep. This is Margot Donahue, and my cohort in creepitude, as always, is the amazing Sonia Mansfield. Hey, Sonia.
Hello, my friend.
Aloha, my friend.
Aloha.
As we are recording this, we are doing so because we're recording on a Thursday. We usually drop our shows on Friday. Sonia is leaving for a week in Hawaii.
Yes,
She's Hawaii.
I'll be in Oahu, kicking back, chilling
Like a villain.
for a whole week. Me and Calvin just chilling, swimming with the turtles, drinking like a fish.
I can't. I'm so happy for you. You deserve.
Well,
you
he's
deserve
not
it.
going to be. He's not going to be drinking like a fish, but I might.
Right.
No, I'm excited. We're going to have a great time, and I appreciate everyone's patience with the, an old classic.
This is a great one. This is an oldie but a goodie, and it's kind of eternal. It's always in the news, unfortunately, since the time
Sadly.
we recorded this. Yes. We're talking about Ray Cohn, who was the mentor to Donald Trump in the 70s when Donald Trump was just the son of Trump and was just a real estate guy that not many people really knew about. Ray Cohn made him famous and taught him everything he knows, and all that crap he's doing now. We can
Thanks a lot, asshole.
trace it back to Ray Cohn. So we're bringing that up again today. Also because there's a movie coming out on the 11th. It's called The Apprentice and has Sebastian Stan as Donald Trump and Jeremy Strong as Ray Cohn. So we thought this works perfectly. It's election season. People are talking about him again. They always bring him up when Donald Trump is running for something. So that's why we're bringing it up today.
When is Donald Trump not running for something?
Oh my God. Since 2016, it's been nonstop. We want to thank everybody that since the last time we recorded this, I guess we'll just go for the rigmarole, excuse me. So if we're always looking for suggestions for creeps, and we always end the show with somebody who's not a creep. So just remember that at the end, we'll have something fun for you.
Yes.
Okay. But first off, we are on Facebook. We have a basic Facebook page, but that's where people go to complain about our language. This is your warning. We use salty language in this show, and I have a feeling we used a lot of it in this episode. We recorded in season 4.
Fuck yeah, we do.
We are much more interactive and responsive in our private Facebook group. You type in What a Creep podcast group in Facebook and ask to join. You have to answer 3 questions, one of them promising to be not an asshole. We'd really appreciate it if you weren't an asshole. Our listeners are the best. It's the best group on Facebook. We have a fun time there. Yes. We're on Twitter at CreepPod because somebody had What a Creep on Twitter for over 10 years and never used it.
Creep!
And we are on Threads and Instagram and Blue Sky at What a Creep Podcast. Our email is whatacreeppodcast@gmail.com. And if you would like some stickers, send us your address via email, and wherever you are on the planet of Earth, we will send them to you. Dare us. We love it when you dare us to do it. We love to do that. Sonia, you wanted to get them through the website? Tell them all about the website.
Yeah, whatacreeppodcast.com. It's everything you want to know. Everything that you want to know about the show, but we're afraid to ask. We have links to all of our past episodes, and you can click into each of the blog posts there, and you can see all of our sources, because we source everything we do. We're not making this stuff up, and we want to give people credit for the work they've done. And if you want to do a deeper dive on, say,
Ray
the
Cohn
creep you're listening to, yes, that's a great place to start. Click in there, read more, learn, do all the fun things. We also have a link to our merch shop where you can get t-shirts and tote bags and face masks, and I can testify that the shirts are very cozy. I have bought a few.
I've bought a few. Yep. I use them it's for my sleep time. I cut out the neck, and my one I just got recently is The High Road Can Get Fucked. I love that one. It's comfy and cozy, and it's a great message.
It is. It is.
It is.
And it's accurate.
Yes.
So do that. There's also a link to our Patreon. You want to tell them about that, Margot?
Yes, Patreon. We have our first 9 seasons of our show on the Patreon page. And then Sonia and I put out 2 bonus episodes a month. And the bonus episodes are fun because we're just shooting the shit, talking about stuff in the news. And we do it over video so you can see us when we're doing it. It's so exciting. It's
People
so
tell us that,
three-dimensional.
like, yeah, they have mixed up the voices, apparently, and sometimes they think my voice is Margot, and this is setting some people straight. I don't know how you could possibly mix us up. How do you mix up Wednesday and Enid? I don't know. But
it's Sonia had her birthday this week, by the way. So happy birthday, Sonia. And
thank you, everyone, for the birthday wishes.
Absolutely. And happy Libra season to everybody. Libra brings justice and balance
to the force.
So think about that the next few weeks if you're, a mission for you this month. And okay, we're going to go into this episode. What I'm going to do, it's a little different. I'm going to play the trailer for The Apprentice, and then we'll get directly into this show. And just to remind you all, we also co-host a show called Dorking Out, where we dork out about movies. We currently are dorking out about...
what did we do? Oh, Shaun of the Dead.
Shaun of the Dead. Yes, it's Spooky Susie.
Yeah,
spooky season movies. So we are going to be reposting this weekend our Lost Boys episode.
This is a good one.
We love this movie. We love this episode. We had so much fun doing it. So that's going to be coming up soon. And next week we'll have a new episode. We're just going to drop it a day later. Let's just take a breath, enjoy it. It's Friday. It's Friday.
See you on the other side.
Yes.
Hello, this is Donald Trump from Mr. Cohn. Thank you so much.
Donald who?
1, 2, 3, 4!
Roy Cohn, nice to meet you.
The Roy Cohn, you're brutal.
Guilty as charged.
How do you always win?
There's rules. The first rule is attack, attack, attack.
It's going to be the finest building in the city, maybe the country, in the world.
Rule 2, admit nothing, deny everything.
There's never been anything like this, of this magnitude, this quality. Ooh, cheese balls over here.
What are you doing?
You want one?
No, it looks totally disgusting.
Cheese balls.
Rule 3, no matter what happens, you claim victory and never admit defeat. You have to be willing to do anything to anyone to win. You have a big ass. You got to work on that.
Your face looked like an orange.
Attack, attack, attack.
Deny everything, admit nothing.
Never admit defeat.
What if you lost your fortune today?
Well, then maybe I'll run for president. I don't know.
I say, if you're indicted, you're invited.
All right, we're going to look into that. That's a good one. Email that shit to yourself, please, Margot.
Okay. Are you ready for our creep today, Sonia?
I was born ready.
Our creep today is Roy Cohn. For those of you that are either just young or you don't live in America, I think this is going to be a new story for you, and I think you'll enjoy it. And my sources are Wikipedia. We also put all the sources at the top of the show, and we include them in our show notes so you guys can check it out for yourselves. Roy Cohn Wikipedia page, The Atlantic, Politico, Esquire, Life magazine. Where's My Roy Cohn? That was a documentary I saw. It's directed by Matt Turnauer. That is the reason we're doing the show. I saw the documentary and then I immediately texted Sonia and said, I need to talk about this ASAP.
This happens all the time.
It does.
We have a list at the beginning of every season, and then that list changes as Netflix releases documentaries.
I also caught Citizen Cohn, which is, I have the link for it here. It's a YouTube link. It's a 1992 HBO film starring former creep, or previous creep, I should say, James Woods as...
Oh my God, creep and creep action.
Exactly, creep on creep action. And then the book, The Fixers by Joe Palazzolo and Michael Rothfeld. And are you ready?
I am ready.
Roy Cohn is one of the most influential lawyers to have ever practiced in the United States. He is linked closely with McCarthyism and never accepting responsibility for its defeat. And Cohn was also self-described patriot who felt that the ends justify the means.
By the way, self-described patriots are the fucking worst. Like, your actions don't say patriot. You have to describe yourself as a patriot. I love it. Yes.
It's like when you meet somebody who describes themselves as smart, they're usually not smart. Right?
True.
He was the professional mentor of our current president, and his pugnacious attitude and complete lack of a moral compass during the 50s through the 80s predicated the world we live in now. That's why he's worthy of being on the show today. He was a self-hating Jewish person who attacked Jews. He was a gay man who prosecuted homosexuals. He is a lawyer who broke the law frequently and ripped off his clients. So let us learn about Roy Cohn.
He is a triple threat. He is disgusting on every level.
Roy Cohn was born in New York City in 1927. He is the only child of Dora and Albert Cohn. Dora was a very wealthy woman who was famous in her family for not being attractive, neither with her appearance or her personality. Sorry. I know.
I love that you could be famous in your family for that.
She was not considered good enough of a catch to attract a suitor, even though she was an heir to the Lionel Trains fortune, and her family owned a bank called the Bank of the U.S. She was still called the ugliest girl in the Bronx. She's not, by the way. She's perfectly fine looking, but I think she must have just been really high maintenance.
Damn, that's so awful. Like, that you're so rich that people are still like, no, but she's so ugly.
Exactly.
It's not worth it. Maybe you could like cover her face with her money, or something.
And she wasn't, by the way. This is just
Yeah.
that they interviewed family members, and that's what they said. She did marry an older man who was later appointed as a judge, and people claim this was just a part of the bargain for them.
Was he blind?
No.
No,
weird. And he was, and by the way,
so ugly.
he was no Brad Pitt either. But he was a judge, but he wanted to work for the Supreme Court, and he was very active in Democratic politics. So it was like, if you marry her, we'll help you along with that career. When Roy was born, she shifted, his mother, Dora, shifted all of her attention to him over everything else in her life. And he was actually a really cute little baby. But as he grew...
I don't believe you. I bet he was ugly too. And she bought like designer bags that they both wore over their heads because they are just hideous.
What if he looked like Rosemary's Baby? Poor thing.
I'm sorry. I'm not going to get past the fact that everyone said she was so ugly.
Okay. But as he was growing up, as a kid, she noticed he was developing a very big nose, and this bothered her. These are shallow people.
Sorry.
I know.
Oh my gosh, you guys, I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
I can't get past it. All right.
Well, when you see the picture of him, by the way, I put it in our Facebook group. Some people didn't even know who he was. They're like, oh my God, this guy is ugly. It's like, he's also evil.
I just have I have an image in my head of like a giant nose with eyeballs.
Well, so she tried to get his nose fixed when he was very, very young, but the doctor screwed up and caused a scar that ran down the middle of his nose. So not only was it huge compared to the rest of his face, but it had a scar in the middle of it, which bothered him his whole life. And that could be part of the things that makes him an angry person. You never know what happens. So here's a story about, you're going to like this too. By the way, he's not a child molester, just in case. So we've had a few of those in the last few episodes, and people get upset. So no child molesting is going on here. Here's a story about where Roy may have developed a lack of empathy. One year on Passover, the Cohn family gathered the traditional Passover meal, and then during the meal, you ask 4 questions, and the youngest male member or just youngest person asks the questions. But anyway, someone had asked why this night was special of all nights, and Dora bursted out, "Why is it special? The maid passed away in the kitchen." It turns out...
That's hilarious.
It turns out their housekeeper died in the kitchen at some point during the day. Nobody knows when. And his mother, instead of like interrupting the holiday or sending people home, she put her under a table and waited until dinner was done before she called an ambulance.
Oh my God. Weekend at Cohen's.
It's exactly.
Yeah, they just moved her around and made her talk. And did they like set her up in a chair? And oh my God, they're the worst.
I meant to say
what terrible people.
I keep writing this out. It's Cohn, not Cohn, and it's not Cohen. It's Cohn. 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 Okay.
No, it's me. That's totally me. I'm a jackass when it comes to names, everybody. She's saying it right. I am wrong.
Okay, so when Roy was a kid, he was antisocial with other kids his age. He preferred adults and adult conversation. He actually met FDR while he was in office and had a totally normal conversation with him when he was about 10 years old. He liked being with adults, though he had a habit of bringing a stuffed frog with him everywhere he went, well into his teenage years. He liked frogs his whole life, by the way. Like that was his motif in his office and his home. He had frogs everywhere. You know,
yeah, the frog was also super ugly.
Michigan J Frog. Hello, my baby. Hello, my darling.
But only for him. When
Exactly.
other people left. When other people left, he dances.
He was incredibly precocious, intelligent. He graduated from Columbia Law School in 1947 at the age of 20.
So I just had this image in my head of he graduated in 47, but his nose graduated in 46.
Because it's so big.
Because it's so big. You get it, you guys? He's ugly.
He had to wait a year to be admitted to the bar, and right then, when he was 21, and that very day, he was offered a job as a U.S. attorney in Manhattan. Once again, his dad had all those connections. That year, he also joined the Board of American Jewish League Against Communists. He hated communism, and he secured several convictions during his tenure as an assistant U.S. attorney. And this is a different time. I mean, look, we're all mad at the Russians now, or we should be. But the thing then was we thought that they were developing weapons, and there was also the space race and stuff like that. So he was let me say this again, he was patriotic. I'll mention it a couple of times. So that was something he was very passionate about. So let's go to 1951. Julius and Ethel Rosenberg were in the news. They were a New York couple. They were tried as Russian spies and were threatened with the death penalty. And this case happened in New York. This was the first for a trial of this kind during an era of peace in the U.S. At 24, Cohn made a name for himself at this trial. He directly examined Ethel's brother, David Greenglass, on the stand. And David said he believed his brother-in-law passed along secrets about the Manhattan Project to the Russians. Now, he later claimed that he lied and was encouraged to lie by Cohn to do so. What was known was that Cohn was very close with the judge. He encouraged him to enforce the death penalty. He felt very, very sure that anybody that was a spy should be executed. Julius and Ethel were both convicted, and let me tell you, Ethel was ride or die, literally, for her husband. They had 2 young boys and left them orphans. She refused to make any kind of a deal. But the evidence, well, let me just say, they were both convicted, and my parents remember this when they were kids, people talking about this case, because my parents both grew up in New York. They were electrocuted in 1953, and it was a huge deal, first of all, to use the death penalty in this kind of a case, but also, was it a good trial? Was it a fair trial? Was this justice? And it literally caused riots around the country, and people were very divided about this verdict. Experts say Julius most likely was a spy. It's pretty certain that he was. But Ethel's participation has always kind of been in question. Some say she didn't know at all. I think if you're that close to somebody, you would know.
Right.
You know, but
I think what's more important, how do they look? Were they ugly?
No, they were not ugly people.
That's why he hates them so much.
Yes.
Because they're beautiful.
They were an average-looking middle-aged couple, but many felt that they were not tried justly. But Cohn always claimed that victory, and he said he never felt any kind of guilt about it whatsoever. Decades later, when he was asked about it, he said, "I could pull that switch myself even today."
Ew.
Yeah. So this verdict brings him to the attention of the FBI and its director, J. Edgar Hoover. Did you see the movie with Leonardo DiCaprio as J. Edgar Hoover?
I did not.
It's kind of ridiculous.
Okay.
Yeah.
Should I see it?
Yeah. I mean, it's not a must-see, but you should check it out. I mean, DiCaprio's good, but it's like a lot of makeup in action.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Hoover was convinced of two things: that both communists and homosexuals were taking positions in the American government, and they needed to be
including himself.
Well, he was homosexual, by the way. He had a male friend live with him for like 20 years. I mean,
quote unquote
friend who he left his entire estate to and shit like that. Okay. And that they needed to be chased out to protect the American people. I said, oh, by the way, J. Edgar Hoover was gay, and he closeted his whole adult life, even though he personally attacked people about their sexuality and blackmailed them. Not a nice guy.
Mm-mm.
Another not nice guy is Joseph McCarthy. He's a senator from Wisconsin. And starting in 1950, he began a fight against the Cold War by going after communist sympathizers. He hired Roy Cohn to be his chief counsel over a young Robert Kennedy. And Cohn and Kennedy hated each other and got into physical skirmishes.
Well, Kennedy is very good looking.
Yeah, he hated his handsome. He was too much handsome.
I'm going to mess up your beautiful face.
I hate your handsome. And your accent. Thus started in America the Senate Permanent Subcommittee on Investigations. Cohn and McCarthy operated in secret as much as they could at the start. Cohn convinced President Dwight Eisenhower that homosexuals serving in the U.S. government were a threat to national safety because they could be blackmailed for their homosexuality and sell U.S. secrets to foreign governments. This was known as the Lavender Scare. Eisenhower then banned homosexuals from working in the federal government because of this. And it was a different world. It was illegal to be gay in most states. But these are a bunch of gay people organizing against other gay people. It's, it's messed up.
They're just, accusing everybody of doing what they're actually doing.
Right. Yeah, it didn't occur to them they could be patriotic as well. I mean, you gay and patriotic just like you guys were. But anyway, Cohn told the press, and he would love the press his entire life, that he was on the hunt to find homosexuals and sex perverts in the government.
Good luck. Oh, they would have their work cut out for them now.
Yeah. Also in 1953, Cohn met a fellow anti-communist activist. His name was G. David Shine. But he was just known as David Shine his whole life. He came from a very wealthy hotel family, and he was looking for a career basically fighting Russia. Cohn was smitten with the very tall, very handsome Shine, who looked like a movie star. Shine was so fervently anti-communist, he once created a How to Spot a Communist pamphlet and had his family distribute them at all of their hotels and include them in every hotel room.
He was so against communism that he wouldn't even drink vodka.
Yet. McCarthy noticed that Cohn seemed to have a crush on Shine, and that it made him appear to be irrational. This is apparently Cohn's first crush. Nobody can find anything prior to that, male or female, that made him even slightly happy. This is the first time that people he acted like a teenager, basically. Like he was really Twitter-pated, as they say. So Shine, they used to say, I don't know, I'm old. Shine was an unpaid consultant to the cause and famously went on a European trip with Roy Cohn, looking into different libraries and stuff, trying to find authors and anybody that was writing anti-American propaganda. Later in 1953, Shine was drafted into the Army, and Cohn tried all of his connections to make sure that he was based in Washington, D.C. They wanted to post him overseas. Cohn threatened to, quote, wreck the Army if his demands were not met. He was willing to do anything to keep Shine in America. He claimed the Army was holding Shine hostage, and he was willing to fight back publicly to protect his friends. He loses his goddamn mind over this. Before this, he's very cool.
His friend.
Yeah, his special friend. Cohn told the media that communists were working in the Department of Defense and were taking over Hollywood as well. So in 1954, we had the famous Army McCarthy hearings, which were televised to 20 million people who watched and were fascinated by what they saw. And that's actually a huge number compared to the population. This is when television was first starting to gain popularity and the prices for it were going down, so more families could afford it. And I always thought it was Army and McCarthy hearings going after communists. But it was actually McCarthy and Cohn going after the Army, which seems really risky to me.
Yeah.
But here's some people who are accused of being communist at the time. And for some of them, it really hurt their careers. Not all, but some of them. But here's just some of the people. Lucille Ball, Elmer Bernstein, Dalton Trumbo, Charlie Chaplin, Ruth Gordon, Lee Grant, Lena Horne, Burgess Meredith, Zero Mostel, Paul Robeson, Dorothy Parker, Artie Shaw, and Orson Welles. There were some people who refused to name names. They would go to people like, you know, a person who went to this commie thing in 1937. Tell us who they were. Or did you see this man? Tell us yes or no. One of them was author Dashiell Hammett. He was a veteran of 2 wars. He wound up serving time in jail by invoking his Fifth Amendment rights, which prohibits self-incrimination and double jeopardy. Yeah. Cohn never felt bad about that for a second, or any of the people that served jail time.
Dashiell Hammett wrote many, many things.
The Maltese Falcon.
He wrote The Thin Man.
Yeah.
Oh, and The Thin Man is also based on his story.
Yes.
And the Thin Man movies are some of my faves.
Cohn was an attack dog at the hearings. He caused a great deal of notice and publicity. He would whisper into McCarthy's ears and ask people all kinds of, and was very confrontational. And sometimes it got personal when he was going after people. He just looked like a rabid dog, right? The homophobia that was on display, because there were a lot of people in government that they found out were homosexuals and publicly, fired them. There was one person named Joseph Welch. He was the Army's attorney. And he had asked about a photo entered into evidence by Cohn, and it was showing Shine in Europe with another military person. And Welch asked Cohn and McCarthy, so who brought this picture? Was it a pixie? And everybody starts laughing nervously. And they said, you know what a pixie is? It's like a close relative of a fairy. And yeah. And Cohn was, the audience cracks up and Cohn was pissed. And then this went back and forth with like, oh, you and Shine, what are you like close friends, like intimate friends, would you say? Would you say like he's your best friend or something? Like there was a lot of that going on. Once again, Cohn's going after people for being homosexual. So I say fair is fair.
Yeah.
But finally, Welch said to McCarthy and Cohn, have you no sense of shame, sir? Which turns the tide of opinion in America. And they don't. But the whole crowd kind of erupts and goes crazy. It's a very cinematic moment. McCarthy, we should say, was a drunk, and he kind of let Cohn run wild on all those people that they questioned. And many people lost their jobs, like I said, and their reputation for years because of these hearings. This is until America just had enough of the bullying. So Cohn left McCarthy's staff and was blamed for how it all went downhill. But somehow it's always known as McCarthyism, and it was McCarthy's defeat. He died a few years later from alcoholism. And Shine left politics altogether, and he married a Miss Universe. She was a Nordic lady. They had 6 kids, and he went into film production. He produced the Gene Hackman movie, The French Connection. He never, ever spoke about Cohn ever again. He died in 1996 in a plane crash. Roy Cohn leaves D.C. behind, and he heads for his next adventure. He's going back to New York City. In 1959, Roy Cohn hostilely took over one of his relatives' family businesses, Lionel Trains. He bought $200,000 in stock, and then he promptly ran the company into the ground. Then Cohn decided, I think I'm going to go back to law. And he started a private practice. in New York City. He loved skirting the rules, and he had no problems with putting his colleagues into compromising predicaments, such as the time he made one of them the president of a bank in Chicago. That man lived in New York City, not Chicago, and only had $35 to himself at the time. That man was eventually audited and nearly went to jail because of this. Cohn is seen on dates with some women, but mostly he keeps company with men. The only real connection with a woman in his life was truly his mother, Dora, who dies in 19...
I heard she's super ugly.
She died of ugly in 1967, leaving him devastated. He totally loved his mother, and she totally loved him. So after that, there was a woman that he was very close to. The only woman that I could find that he was truly, truly close to was none other than Barbara Walters. They had dated in the 50s.
What?
Yes. They dated in the 1950s. She claims they only went on a couple of dates and they've always just been friends. He claimed that they were engaged. And then every once in a while, the media would ask him about her. And he'd be like, oh, when we're 60, we're going to go and get married. That's what we're going to do. And Barbara was sort of like, sure, Jan. But she stood by him most of his life. As a lawyer, he was known for being lazy about research and rarely knew he was representing, even on his way to court. He had a mind like a steel trap and could absorb information so quickly that usually what he would do is just get into a cab with a bunch of colleagues and they would tell him what's going on in the case, going down to the courthouse. He would go to the courthouse and then he was able to then speak extemporaneously for hours with zero notes. He could recall on which page a certain statement was made, and he completely threw people off their game. He was really supposedly amazing to watch in court, and he had a super sharp mind. And his question was always, before he got into a case, was, who is the judge? Because once he knew the judge, he could just kind of work from there. He was also known as a very tough litigator with no qualms over the people he represented. So he's no longer on the side of justice. He was no longer a prosecutor. So he was taking on defendants. Mm-hmm. And everyone is entitled to a defense. That is what we have in America. That's what we're based on. His roster of peeps included mafiosos like Tony Salerno, Carmine Galante, and John Gotti. And he once said on the way to court one day, I pass no moral judgments on my clients. John Gotti was accused of murder in 1975. He was one of a group of people that held down a person that was shot and killed as part of a hit. Roy Cohn was able to strike a deal and had him convicted of manslaughter. And he only had to serve, and I've seen 2 and 4 years sentence, but it was a very small sentence. Yeah. He also represented the Roman Catholic Church. George Steinbrenner.
Of course he did.
And he was friendly with them. Yeah. George Steinbrenner, owner of the New York Yankees, the owners of Studio 54, and one certain Donald J. Trump, who he made his personal protege. In 1973, the Trump... Here we go. In 1973, the Trump family was accused by the Justice Department of violating the Fair Housing Act for not renting to African Americans in 39 of their properties in Brooklyn, Queens, Bronx, and Staten Island. Trump was looking to take over Manhattan real estate, but these kind of accusations were making it hard for him to acquire properties, and it was just kind of a pain in the ass for him, he said. He accused the government of being bullies and that they were trying to hurt a businessman. So he goes to all these different lawyers and they all tell him, just settle. Just do what they tell you to do. Just settle. It's the government. You can't win. Roy Cohn was the one person that said to him, not only are you going to fight this, I would advise you to countersue the government for harassment. Trump's like, sweet, let's do it.
Yeah. Oh my God. A couple of pieces of shit in a pod.
Trump lost. I was in court again a few years later for violating the terms of the agreement with the government. But Trump learned how Cohn conducted business and got away with being outrageous. And this is what Cohn taught Trump. Attack the press. Never admit you're wrong. Never apologize. A settlement is a win. And never leave a paper trail. So don't have any calendars that people can look through. And try to keep your name off of paperwork as much as you can. Don't send emails. Well, we have that now, but like don't send notes, anything you can. Just keep it to a bare minimum. Okay, so that's what Trump learns from him. Cohn in the 70s had an office on 68th Street, which is actually a residence. It's a home apartment. And he would live in the bedroom, and he had people working on different floors. So they would just be like 20 lawyers walking around. It just was weird. It was just like you're at a dining room table, and then you're at a couch and stuff like that. It wasn't the norm for the time. Cohn was notorious for, let's see if this sounds familiar, he didn't like paying his bills or loans, including his dry cleaners, hotels, friends, acquaintances, former clients. He had his taxes audited for 20 years straight. He resented paying taxes because he said he hated the fact that it would go to some quote unquote welfare mom. He wound up owing the government $7 million. This is in 1980. That's a shitload of money. And he could never open a bank account because as soon as he would open a bank account, they would claim the money. So I don't know how he conducted stuff, but he did conducted business. But one of his more prominent clients was also Rupert Murdoch. We've heard of him. And though he was...
Oh, gosh. It just keeps getting worse.
Oh, there's more. Just brace yourself.
Okay.
And though Cohn was a registered Democrat his whole life, he followed his parents' politics, he preferred being with Republicans, and he was friendly with Richard Nixon and Ronald Reagan. I mean, he was always friendly with the mayor of the city, whoever it was. But in the mid-'70s, he bragged that he was the one person that introduced Rupert Murdoch to Donald Trump. Cohn was a big booster for Trump and is part of the reason he gained popularity in New York media. Cohn also helped bring Roger Stone, a political consultant and current felon, into President Ronald Reagan's presidential campaign in 1979. It just goes on.
By the way, all of these people, hideously ugly. They're all so ugly, inside and out.
So at the time, New York was split in the Democratic Party because Jimmy Carter was our president, but his popularity with the Iran hostage situation really plummeted. And so a lot of blue states didn't go to Jimmy Carter. They went to Ronald Reagan, but there was a situation where in New York, Roy Cohn gave Roger Stone a suitcase of cash for a lawyer, for the Liberal Party, and then all of a sudden the Democrats had split within the party. And then Reagan carried the state and eventually became president. Roger Stone admitted this years and years after the what's the expression I'm thinking of?
Oh, the statute of limitations.
Thank you. So the federal government went after Cohn throughout the 60s, 70s, and 80s for all kinds of dirty shit, from not paying taxes to witness tampering, professional misconduct, and perjury. Everything from city contracts to investments. He all over the place. Writer Canaletta interviewed Roy for Esquire magazine in 1978 and said that Cohn actually loved being indicted because it gave him a platform to attack his enemies. First indictment was in 1964, when he was acquitted of perjury. The next time it happened was in 1969. He was on trial again, and his lawyer has a heart attack just before final arguments. So Roy decides he can do it by himself, and he speaks for 7 hours straight. No notes. And it's a big plea about how much he loves America and how he loves our country so much that he would never, ever break the law. He's such a proud American. And he also said the New York DA's office and state attorneys had a vendetta out for him because of the kind of clients that he has. And he was so persuasive that the next day, one of the jurors showed up with a U.S. flag on his lapel jacket, and he was acquitted again. And he was known as a Teflon fraud. Once again, as I said before, Roy was a huge patriot who would insist at parties that people stand and sing "God Bless America" whenever he was in the mood for it. One of his friends claimed that...
He sounds so fun at parties. So fun at parties. What a dick.
One friend claimed that there was There was an occasion at a piano bar in Provincetown, Massachusetts, which is like a hint and a nod to the guy is gay, but where Roy Cohn insisted on singing God Bless America 3 times in a row. He then had a hard-on and went home to bed. Because that's such a sexy song.
Oh my, that song, it just fucking does it for me too. I get it. I sometimes I just put it on and I'm like, David, God bless America. Oh God, what a creep. And we haven't, that's why we call our podcast this.
In the 70s, Roy enjoys being a New Yorker in a permissive time. He takes tons of drugs. He works out to stay slim, including doing 200 sit-ups every day and water skiing every chance he can get. He has, including on the New York Hudson River, which was super gross and polluted at the time.
That sounds nasty.
Oh, yeah. His one big food creep move: when going out to restaurants, he would rarely order food. Instead, he would pick off the plates of the people sitting with him using his fingers.
Oh my God, he's an even bigger asshole than I thought.
That's because he said
the worst.
It's the worst.
You're like, eat your food.
But he decided that those calories didn't count, which I kind of respect.
Let's go back to the Hudson Bay thing real fast.
Yes.
Like, how polluted and gross was it back then? Like,
it's not even
like smelly, right?
It would smell, and it also it was like a steam kind of emanated from it, and that was just so much
nasty.
pollutants. Yeah. Oh yeah. My mom and dad, I said, grew up in New York. My dad's from Far Rockaway, and he would talk about the Hudson River and stuff, and like he would hear about Hell's Kitchen, New York. They would jump off the piers. These were like the kids of mobsters, Irish mobsters. And people would say like, they're so tough, they'll swim off the piers of the water there. Like, that's how it was, so gross and scary that only super tough people would do it. And water skiing, like, ugh.
Yeah.
I can't even.
There's all that shit in the water, and Roy Cohn is still the grossest thing in the bay. It's so nasty.
So Roy works the press and has chummy relationships with all of the gossip columnists, including at the New York Post and Daily News. He would plant fake stories just to see his name in the papers and or to attract a potential client. He handled a lot of divorces, by the way, celebrity divorces. So he always had gossip to spread around. He always denied the fake stories, but it was him. And guess who else has done that? Our current president.
He has like a whole fake persona.
Roy loved famous people, and he loved hanging out at Studio 54, which was this very popular disco in the city in the 70s. He was friends, I'm making air quotes, these people aren't really friends, but with Andy Warhol and Halston, the designer. When the owners of Studio 54, which were Steve Rubell and Ian Schrager, whenever they have legal troubles, they would hire Roy Cohn, and Roy would fight like crazy. He also at Studio 54 was notorious for picking up men, young men, very young men, and saying he needs to have sex every day, preferably with a new partner. He used the money from the firm that he worked for to buy himself a rich lifestyle. So he wasn't making a lot salary-wise as much as you would think. It was like $100,000, which is a lot of money, but he had several homes. He had 3 Rolls Royces. It was all billed to the firm. So he never asked to make partner, but he spent the company money on yachts and Rolls Royces, expensive meals, rent, mortgage on 2 homes, and trips. But he would say, look, I have to socialize. Everybody knows who I am. And I'm bringing you all these great clients. I'm bringing you a lot of publicity. So it's like $500,000 to $1 million a year to keep his lifestyle going. He also tried to maintain a deep, dark tan all year round. So he spent quite a bit of time in Miami. I was saying he liked being on the water. He bought a yacht with the company money, and he put in the company's name. So he technically didn't own the yacht, but he was on the yacht most of the time. And he usually had, once his mother died, he hired very handsome blonde boys. And that for the driver, for the captain, to work at his office. Like he surrounded himself with pretty people, mainly men.
Was the yacht called like the Ugly Duckling?
Well, this is the thing. You're supposed to name your yacht after a woman, but he hated women. He didn't like women. He only liked Barbara Walters and his mother. That's pretty much it.
Please tell me he named the yacht Barbara Walters.
I wish it was Baba Wawa.
Baba Wawa.
No, he called his yacht Defiance. Get it?
Lame. That's lame. That's disappointing.
In 1973, Defiance sank off the shores of Florida after it caught on fire on its way to New York.
That yacht probably set itself on fire. Fuck this guy.
Well, pay attention. Here we go. 2 of the 3 crew members were able to jump off and swim for help. However, Charles Martinson, who was 21 years old, was killed. He was not able to get away. Yeah. It was
awful.
It's terrible. It's awful. It was a horrible way to die. It was never proven that Cohn had something to do with the sinking, but there were always rumors that he had it done for the insurance, and he could never kind of escape those rumors. The boat had major issues, and the first captain hired to take it out refused to sail it. So there's always been the question, but he got away with it. The kid's father, Charles's father, tried to sue Cohn, but nothing ever came of it. And Roy Cohn, whenever you brought it up, he would say, well, first of all, it was not my boat. It belonged to my employers. But he was the one who, he said he mainly used it for business and pleasure. He was the one that collected money off of the insurance. He created a dummy company and put it in that.
Jeez.
Yeah.
So crooked.
Yeah. I'm going back and forth in the 70s because I think he knew he wasn't going to live a long life, so he just lived crazy. He had a facelift at one point, and the job was botched. So
oh, no.
It's like Leatherface. It was a face on top of a face. It looked like right on his jawline. It was this noticeable difference, and it was hideous. And it was
now he's even uglier.
He was even uglier. So he thought, I'll just get super tan and nobody will notice it. And I think that makes it worse because you could totally see the tan line where his ear is. But yeah, he's hideous on so many levels.
Yuck.
I was saying that he was indicted, but he was acquitted. That was until he finally just went a bridge too far. In 1975, the family of Louis Rosenthal, a multimillionaire, who was comatose and dying in a hospital, the family claims that Cohn went into his room. He had written out a will giving him part of the family fortune, and he literally forced his hand to make a signature on the document. So Cohn is using this man's hand to and it barely was an X. It did not even appear on the signature line. It took years and years, but eventually it was thrown out of court. And this time, that's malfeasance. This time, the charges would stick. After this, by the way, so Reagan becomes president. He's very close with Ronald Reagan and Nancy and Donald Trump. All these guys, they're all kind of friends with each other. So we're going to fast forward to 1986, and Cohn is finally being charged with these crimes. He's going behalf of the New York State Supreme Court, and he asked his friends to to speak up for him. Donald Trump, fellow lawyer and previous creep subject Alan Dershowitz, and Barbara Walters were among those people who spoke of his good character.
Damn it, Barbara Walters.
This is one of the reasons, I'm always saying I'm not a big fan of Barbara Walters.
Yeah.
She's not a hero for women. She doesn't stick up for women. She sucks up to the powerful. And this is a total case of that. Like, she just likes having somebody this famous having lunch with her. That's what she cared about. Roy was disbarred, which was a huge embarrassment for him. He'd been a lawyer since he was 21 years old. That was his big ticket. You know what I mean? Being this vicious lawyer. Mm-hmm. As soon as he was disbarred, many of his friends dropped him. What a shock. He was giving interviews trying to raise his profile again, and he did an interview with 60 Minutes, and it was just one of those things where he was asked point blank, do you have AIDS and are you homosexual? And Roy does not look good at all. He looks tan, but he looks really thin. Like, he was always a thin guy, but he's like scary skinny. And Roy looks terrible. and says like, no, I had cancer, a liver cancer, but I'm okay now. I'm much better now. They would ask people this, and it was, ugh. Well, the fact is that he did have AIDS, and he found out he had it in 1985. He lied to every single person in his life. He said to every single person, including his lovers, that he had liver cancer and that he was in remission. And because of his close relationship to the Reagans, he was able to access early experimental treatments for AIDS, including AZT. He would not, however, promise the doctors that he would remain celibate or that he would use a condom or that he would tell anybody that he had AIDS. He could not promise that.
Such a piece of shit.
And fuck him for that.
I know.
Yeah. Roy Cohn died August 2nd, 1986, at the age of 59. Never admitted to being gay. Never admitted he had AIDS. 400 people attended his funeral, including Donald Trump, Rupert Murdoch, and Barbara Walters, but not the Reagans. Years later, the brilliant Roger Stone would say, Roy Cohn was not gay. He was a man who liked having sex with men. He was not weak or effeminate.
Oh my God. Yeah. Okay.
So the title of the documentary that I was referring to before is Where is My Roy Cohn? That refers to our current president. In 2017, remember the Mueller report? Remember all that stuff?
Yeah.
James Comey.
Oh my God. It was so long ago.
It feels so long ago. Well, Attorney General Jeff Sessions said he had to recuse himself because he had to recuse himself. And Trump was so pissed off that he did that. And Sessions says, no, I have to. That's the law. And Trump just apparently bellowed to everybody in the room, where's my Roy Cohn? Because he wanted somebody that would just tell him, now we can do whatever we want. We can change the rules. We can bend the rules. We can do whatever the hell we want. He learned all about loyalty and how to run a business by Roy Cohn. And that is it. That is our creep this week. Roy Cohn. What an asshole.
What a fucking asshole. That's our spinoff podcast. What a fucking asshole. Good job, Margot. There's so much to dig into there.
Yeah,
there's good job getting it all together.
Thank you. I mean, there's more I could have done and more stuff that he did, but I think you get the idea. He was just a slimy individual. And he just looked evil. If you looked at his face, like his eyes are dead.
Yeah, because he's ugly. I like to think that after he was disbarred, like all the people that supposedly were his friends were like, now you're not a lawyer anymore and you're ugly. And they don't want to hang out with him.
It happened like in November, I want to say, but he had an annual party every year and everybody would show up for it. It would be huge, huge, huge. And it was right after this verdict came out and he was disbarred. Nobody showed up for it. It's just like in a movie, like supposedly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I love it. I love it. And then here's how I imagine it. Nobody shows up and he's sitting on the couch and like there's like a single tear running down his face and he's singing God Bless America
with a heart on
and like eating with a heart on and like eating a cake all by himself. That's how I envision it.
With his hands. With his hands.
With his hand. Yeah. I love it.
Yeah.
Fucking creep. Do you want to hear about someone who's not a creep?
Yes, please.
So you won't be surprised to hear this, but it's kind of difficult to find a good lawyer for not a creep. And no offense to any lawyers who are listening. I'm sure you're a good person. You know, it's just, I don't know you and I can't Google you and find out. Anyway, I did find one. So for more than 40 years, Gareth Pierce has fought to free the wrongly accused and convicted. Did you see the movie In the Name of the Father?
Yes. And who stars in that? Daniel Day-Lewis?
It's Daniel Day-Lewis. And one of her cases, that's the subject of that movie. She was played by Emma Thompson. So I'm giving people a little frame of reference here. It's based on the true story of the Guildford Four. And it was these men who were wrongly convicted of bombings that were carried out by the Provisional Irish Republican Army. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Daniel Day-Lewis, Emma Thompson played her in the movie. By the way, Gareth Pierce says she's never seen the movie. And I found a quote that said, quote, I was an extremely unimportant participant in the story and I was given a seemingly important status. And she's very like, she doesn't like the limelight. She's very not comfortable with that. So leading civil rights lawyer Benedict Bernberg, he first hired her back in the day. He says that he believes, and this is a quote, transform the criminal justice scene in this country almost single-handedly. And by country, he means Britain. She has represented some of the highest profile human rights cases in recent British history. There's a quote here. It says, for over 30 years, she has worked in an area where most of the vulnerable are often facing the full might of the state, according to her colleague, Dame Helena Kennedy. Some of her clients have been the Guilford Four that I mentioned. They all have names like this, by the way. Tipton 3, the Birmingham 6, and the former spy, David Shale. She takes these kinds of cases. This is a really good quote. She said she wants to protect the minority. She says the minority has to be protected from what the majority thinks. Otherwise, the greatest happiness of the greatest number prevails. Most things, secret trials, torture, and all the rest, all to do. But secrecy kills justice. It has the effect of burying understanding. And I think that that's important. I think that's something that we struggle with here right now in the country, where like the Supreme Court will make some ruling and they'll say, so they'll say, hey, gay marriage is good. It's legal. Go for it. And then people will come out and say, well, a majority of the country doesn't want gay marriage. And it's like, well, that's what the court should be doing. They should be applying the law. They have to protect our most vulnerable citizens from a majority when they're wrong. It's what they should do. And this is one of the things that she's always been really focused on. So as a young woman, she worked as a journalist and she covered Martin Luther King Jr. and the civil rights movement here in the United States. And she was very inspired by him. And she went back to London in 1970 and she went to law school.
Wow.
And she specialized in human rights. Yeah. And she doesn't like media attention, like I said, or really any attention. Apparently, they offered her a chance to be like commander of the Order of the British Empire. I don't know what that means, but it sounds really fancy. And she was like, no, thanks. She declined it. She lives in North London with her husband, and he works as a writer and a photographer, and she's got 2 sons. She is still practicing law. She's 80 years old.
Wow.
She's still practicing law. And she spent much of her time in the last decade working for different Muslim terror suspects. Says, we have lost our way in this country. We have entered a new dark age of injustice, and it is frightening that we are overwhelmed by it. I know I am representing innocent people who know that a jury they face will inevitably be predisposed to find them guilty. She feels that so much of the rhetoric around the Muslim religion is causing government, ours, like in Britain, to like round up people,
right,
and charge them with things they didn't commit. And she works really hard to get them off, and I think that's amazing. She also wrote a book called Dispatches from the Dark Side on torture and the death of justice. And I'm fascinated by people who work these kinds of cases where they help to get off the wrongly accused. What a nightmare for those people to have not been involved and then to be in prison for shit you didn't do. I can't even imagine how helpless you must feel. And here's somebody that believes you and stands up for you and is successful. So she's awesome. She's not a creep. Go see In the Name of the Father. It's really good. You could stream it.
Yeah, go see In the Name of the Father. It's excellent. That's a good job, Sonia. And she's a really interesting choice. And I always admire those people, too, because you talk about an uphill battle.
Exactly.
Oh, my God.
And I really honed in on the idea of her talking about we have to protect the minority.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's something that people forget. The law isn't supposed to be political like that. It's the law, and like it should be doing the right thing and protecting people. And I like that she reminds people of that.
That is awesome. Good job, Sonia.
Thanks.
Well, this is What a Creep, the podcast that talks about creeps. We also, if you like the sound of our voices, we co-host a show called Dorking Out, where we dork out about movies and pop culture. So please be sure to check that out. There are no creeps in there. Well, sometimes there are creeps in there, but it's not as creepy as what we're doing here, being my point. But we've... But you could find us on social media at What a Creep. Please be sure to join our Facebook group, What a Creep Podcast Group. We're on Twitter at CreepPod. And if you have some suggestions, you can send us a tweet using the Annie Potts gift from Ghostbusters. We got one. We love that. We're also on Instagram at What a Creep Podcast. You can send us an email, whatacreeppodcast@gmail.com. And if you want some stickers, send us an email. We'll get those out to you. Join our Patreon page if you're interested in bonus content. And if you can leave us some stars in Apple Podcasts, that would be amazing. Like I said, sometimes people just don't like our political view and they just send us 1 star just to be dicks. So we would really appreciate you guys that point that out and vote in our favor. We really do appreciate that. And Sonia, where can they find you?
You can find me at thesoniashow.com and The Sonia Show on Twitter and Instagram if you want to see pictures of bread or my Animal Crossing adventures. Where can people find you, Margot?
You could find me at Brooklyn Fit Chick. That's for Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. I'm mostly active on Twitter and Instagram. And my blog, which is finally spiffed up and updated and ready. Yeah, it looks so good. It's brooklynfitchick.com. So be sure to check that out. And guys, we'll be back next week with a new creep. So in the meantime, don't be a creep.
And wash your hands. No, come on.
Thank you for listening to us talk about creeps. You can follow us at What a Creep Podcast on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
But don't follow us too closely.
You can email us your creepy stories at whatacreeppodcast@gmail.com.
But please keep your dick pics to yourself.